Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, comedian, magician, Danny Whitson. But it's all tricks aside, because tonight, we're turning the paranormal into the normal. Join me as we explore the gray areas of reality. We're going to talk all things paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, and aliens, and see how it's all connected. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencer Support Association, and we are live. So if you're an experiencer yourself, or you're just plain nosy, be sure to send me your question and subscribe to the podcast. Now, get ready, because it's going to get deep. No, really, we're going to go way out there, because this is Beyond the TinFoil Hat. What's happening, my paranormal junkies? Welcome to Beyond the TinFoil Hat, and I'm your host, comedian, magician, Danny Whitson. We got a great show for you tonight, though, guys. We do. I hope you guys have been keeping the paranormal normal like always, and you've had a fantastic week. Speaking of which, earlier this week, I don't know if you guys have heard, but a really cool UFO story came out. Apparently, Michelle Reyes spotted a flying tic-tac cylinder-shaped object outside of her window over LaGuardia Airport in New York City. Well, I don't have the video, but we did have the picture. It just popped up there. If you guys get a chance, right there it is. Check it out. But there's a video that you guys can go on Google and just Google UFO LaGuardia Airport, New York City, and you can actually see the actual video of this thing. And it's really impressive. Really impressive. First of all, you got to think, a jetliner, coming into the airport about 200 miles an hour. This thing is moving faster than that. It comes right up to her window. I mean, not right up to the window, but you could see it plain as day. And then the thing is gone. This is impressive. I think it's way too fast to be a drone, way too high up to be a drone. I don't know what it is. I don't know, but definitely go check it out. You can go hop on Google, find it right away. It's hot news. UFO, LaGuardia Airport, New York City. Big shout out to Michelle Reyes for coming forward with this information. Really cool stuff. If you guys have not done so, head over to our Patreon page, Heed the World, and please donate. Like I said, with your donation, I think like a $4 donation, you get access to some of Ryan Stacy's really good articles and stories, some of his investigations, some information that he is getting out there to us. And so it's just like $4. You get a lot of cool stuff. And always head over to the experiencersupport.org. And there's articles, interesting stuff there to check out. And if you have any stories yourself, anything that you would like Ryan to investigate for you, contact him at the experiencersupport.org, and he will get back with you and try to help you as much as he possibly can. All right, let's get moving. Tonight's guest. This is a good one. I think this is a very interesting guest. This guest, he's an author of 13 published books, okay? Mostly known for his pioneer research in Christian ufology. Yes, Christian ufology. So we got religion and the paranormal, I guess. Kind of blend there. He's got and he's a combination of ancient astronaut theory. So that's interesting. So if you guys will, tune in and let's have a conversation with tonight's guest, John Milor.
Howdy. How's it going?
How you doing, John?
Doing really good.
All right. Well, I tell you what, John, some cool stuff right off the bat. But if you don't mind, do you care to introduce yourself a little more in depth to the viewers?
Okay. Yeah, part of my story, my backstory and everything is a really in-depth introduction. Kind of goes how I got into this, but aside from going back to 5 years old and working up to the present, I am former military, retired military actually, retired Chief Master Sergeant, here at the 144th Fighter Wing in Fresno. We were a 4-corner unit, and so I have that extensive military history, but I'm also into cybersecurity. I was the cyber chief, and now I work in the utility sector for cybersecurity. And I have all kinds of different things that I'm interested in, practically everything. I do have 5 degrees. 2 of them are master's degrees. So a lot of the, academia is just to say that I know how to do research. The books that I write, several of them, and in this genre, those are research oriented. So they required me to do a lot of study. And basically, what happened to me starting from my early childhood is, I had a grounding in the faith from my great grandmother, but both of my parents were not practicing any kind of faith. My dad used to make fun of it and tease that he was a pagan and proud of it. My mom was kind of like a hippie farm girl type, very unusual person, open-minded, kind of fancied herself as a white witch because of all the paranormal things that had happened to her in her life and her connection with nature and animals in general, which is just really unusual. And she passed some of that on to me. But in terms of believing the Bible, she had a respect for Jesus and who he is, but like she was upset, that he got murdered. So that kind of like totally misses the entire point that Jesus went to the cross because he chose to. He literally said at any given point he could have summoned a legion of angels to take him off of the cross if he wanted to. He chose to go there. The day, the time, the circumstances, everything. There was no mystery to him.
Well, let me ask you real quick, John. Okay,
yeah.
So your family wasn't the traditional Christian type style family, like you said.
My mother, who raised me, because my mom and my dad divorced when I was a baby, was a hippie.
Okay.
But she would drop me off at my great-grandparents every now and then, and they were exactly like my great-grandfather was a minister. And I got some pictures here to go with this if you want to bring that up. So starting at about 5 years old, here I am, this is a picture of me when I was 5. My mom would drop me off at my great-grandparents' house. You see the Ford Pinto there in the driveway. It's an old picture. It's 1975. And they traveled all over the all over the United States.
I've never in a million years thought I would see Billy Graham and a UFO over his head. You gotta think, Billy Graham. Okay, where I'm from, folks. Okay, I'm from East Tennessee, and Billy Graham is like a major religious icon.
He's a Protestant pope.
Yeah, that's our pope. That's the Baptist pope. Billy
Closest
Graham.
you get to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
So they traveled during the Great Depression, which, you had these people living in tents and stuff like this back then, and they traveled from town to town living out of their car for months at a time for years. And they did big tent revivals and things like that. So they lived by the faith and were very godly people. My great-grandmother always reading the Bible every time I came over. And, one time I asked her, you're always reading that. Are you ever going to finish reading the same book? And she said, oh, I've read it 27 times. I'm on my, 27th reading of it. So it was just something that she always did. And, the TV was on in her house. It was Billy Graham or, some other evangelist. The radio was on, it's playing gospel music, just her. She was all about Jesus. And to say that she's a Christian mystic, I would say that Pentecostal, and she had some unusual stories. For example, she said that one time she was choking from carbon monoxide poisoning, and she prayed to God to help her because she thought she was going to die. She was paralyzed and couldn't move. Suddenly her bedroom door opened up, and this guy, a soldier with a pickle hob helmet, just like this guy right here, walked into her room, grabbed her, rolled her over, and she could instantly start breathing again. And she got a good look at him. He was some soldier of some type with this unusual helmet. So the description of an angel would be very unusual. Uh, he saw that she was okay, turned around and walked out. She immediately got out of bed and went into the living room, and the door was shut with a chain across the door. Had no idea how that guy got in or out of the house. When she was later in life, had a stroke, almost killed her. She was paralyzed from head to toe on the left side of her body. She could not move, and she couldn't talk. Doctors weren't sure if she would ever recover from it. She said Jesus walked into her hospital room, physically manifest, glowing, and he smiled at her. And when he did, she was instantly healed. And he turned around and walked back out. So when the doctors came in, she like sitting there, can you please take the IV out? I'm ready to go home now. So they were kind of shocked, and she was just really happy and giving praise to God and saying, oh, well, Jesus came in and he healed me. And that's what she told everybody. So as hard as that might be to believe, why would at the same time, it was kind of believable. If Jesus is going to appear to somebody, it would be someone like her. That's kind of just what people figured. And, the fact that she had that miracle to go with it kind of gave it some weight. She also saw her son-in-law in the spirit after he died. So that's not a normal thing that Christians normally report, that, seeing a loved one after they died. She had no problem with this. She just told us one morning, reading the newspaper, just made this passing comment. Oh, I saw Charles standing in the spirit, standing at the foot of the bed there this morning. He was young again and glowing and very handsome. And then he just disappeared. She mentioned it like it's a casual thing. And the day before she died, she told her daughter that she saw her husband standing in the spirit at the foot of her bed. And he had his hands out, reaching toward her. And
now he had passed.
And he had passed a couple of years before. And she told her daughter, my grandmother Ruth, she said, I am going to go very soon. Like, I had the option this morning and I almost went. So I just wanted to let you know my time is just about up. The next day she died. So this was the kind of person she was. I consider that kind of like a Christian mystic. But then we move into the other part of the story where Grandma is the one who actually introduced me to the idea of, UFOs. And one time we were all over at her house. It was some kind of family gathering. I was 5 years old. So I didn't have a whole lot of information other than we watched Star Trek, when I was a kid, and other shows and stuff. But Grandma was reading the newspaper, and I think it was like Thanksgiving or something like that. And there's all these people over, and Grandma makes a family announcement, and she hushes everybody up. She said, I have something to say to everybody. When I was a little girl, well, hold on. And then she started reading this newspaper article. She had a newspaper article in her hand, and it was like one of these right here, and it was about a wild goose chase between some police officers. And they were chasing a UFO around the outskirts of Madera County. And everybody's kind of looking at her and sort of looking at each other and with these confused expressions. And I was picking up on it, even at 5 years old. I thought, why is everybody looking like this, You could have heard a pin drop. And then when she finished reading this newspaper article, she dropped the paper and she said, when I was a little girl, I saw a UFO. And she proceeded to tell the story, and it looked something like this, just like the one you were talking about, the cigar-shaped UFO.
Yeah.
And she said this one had a glass bubble on top, and this thing flew by really slow and so close they even saw the guy turn his head and look at him as he flew by. And it was her and her sister that saw it.
And what year was this?
This was like turn of the century, around 100 years ago, 1910, something like that. Wow. She was a little kid.
Okay. Let me do this because I love how you're doing this, and this is very interesting. We do got our first question that popped in real quick, John.
Okay.
So We got Dawn Marie Peterson, one of our very own Tessa members here. She says, I once cut grass with JC, which I'm assuming Jesus Christ. I too blamed for his murder. He told me his sacrifice was that he could become multidimensional, as he was God's only begotten son and no other reality knew of him before then. He was solely ours. So
I would have to say that I've recently contemplated some things about him, not so much the multidimensional, but I guess that you could consider it multidimensional, because I think of him as the Alpha and the Omega, beyond time. So yeah, the Father is outside of time space. Jesus said no one has seen the Father except him. So that means all these visitations and communications between God and people in the Old Testament, that was Jesus. So it occurred to me, where did this body that he had come from, this pre-incarnate body? And then my first thought was that he just like made one, temporary body before he was born. But then it occurred to me, he is transcending time. So there's no reason why he couldn't have spoke his body into existence in the womb of Mary and had been born as a human being, lived, was crucified, died, resurrected, ascended to heaven, then went back in time and created all life in the universe. Because the Bible actually says that he's the firstborn of all creation. So I always wondered, how could he be the firstborn if he's born, he had a mom, so obviously she was born before him, but he's the Alpha and the Omega. Before Abraham was, I am. That's what he said. So he always referred to himself as transcending time. And if God entered time, space, and needed a body for that to interact in time, space, he did it through the body of Jesus. And then he went back in time to create time, space. So he would be multidimensional, because the universe, the heavens, includes a multidimensional universe. We live in a multiverse. And part of what my research covers is the multiverse. So you're right on target with pretty much my research and everything that I've uncovered through years of research in the Bible.
Well, great question, Don. Thank you so much for that question. Back here to the story. So your grandmother saw this UFO, and so she's telling how she saw this.
Yeah. So she tells the family this, right? And she runs home. Her and her sister run home, and they tell their mom about it. So this was back at a time, they'd never even seen a vehicle before, right? They had a wagon like this.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. This is before, people weren't driving cars.
They lived on the plains of Kentucky out in the middle of nowhere. So,
yeah.
They had never seen a car before, never seen a motorized contraption, yet they saw this thing fly by in the sky. So this is like Cuckooville. And their mom heard the story, and she told them, don't ever say anything to anybody about this story ever again.
And by the way, keep in mind, guys, back then, that's how it was. When people saw certain things, they were told, don't ever speak of this again. Keep this. And that was a very common way how they dealt with what they couldn't explain. We just don't talk about it.
So, like, to give you an idea of her mother once caught her and her sister playing with a deck of cards. And she took those cards and she threw them in the oven and burned them.
The devil's
Because right
here,
you see, back then, people got shot in card games, so ain't going to have no card games in this house, period. And so their mom, when she put her foot down, they did what they were told. And they didn't tell anybody. Not too long after this, her sister died. So Grandma Thelma had this story cooped up inside for 70 years. And it was just in the back burner, and suddenly she reads this article in the newspaper that night with the whole family there. And she just, okay, I got to get this off my chest. And after she tells us the story, she sums it up by saying, I don't care what people think. Those things are real. And she just left it at that. Mic drop. And everybody's like looking and like, oh, okay, that's really interesting, Grandma. Except you could tell there was just really kind of some confusion there. But I'm just like, you could see the question marks formulating above my head, right? And I'm like, I was this kind of kid that I had questions about everything. And I was the kind of kid that would drive a lot of adults nuts because they kept asking why, and they'd give an answer, and then I'd ask why to that. And I was trying to get to the root cause of the universe, right? And I had all these existential questions that I always asked my mom, right? And she would humor that. She wouldn't like put a clamp on my curiosity. Instead, she would give these in-depth answers. And sometimes we could sit and actually literally talk for an hour while she's answering questions, one question after another, until I'm finally, okay, I'm done now, you know? So I had all these questions and, okay, what was Grandma talking about? UFO that she saw. That's nothing I ever heard from her before. And Mom said, well, Star Trek, we watch Star Trek. And like, yeah. And she said, well, that's probably a lot more real than what people think. And so I just kind of put myself in park on that, and I just accepted it. And, Jesus is real, the Bible's real, Star Trek is probably real or some version of it. It's all out there. It's part of my reality. I have a bigger reality than a lot of people. And, most kids do have a larger reality, and then that reality shrinks as they become adults. Mine didn't. Mine continued to grow because things would happen to me in life that I wouldn't filter out, paranormal type experiences and stuff. And instead, I would ask questions because I'm a question person, seeker. And, more and more paranormal things continue to happen in my life, and it builds up over time. We always watch shows like In Search of too, because that kind of dovetailed over with, Star Trek because they had Leonard Nimoy narrating it.
Oh yeah, great show. That was a great show growing up.
And then I guess my mom decided to save herself some time with, questions that were brought up about these paranormal things in the show. She got this Time Life subscription. I used to think it was Reader's Digest, but I think it was actually Time Life. And it was a multi-volume encyclopedic set of the paranormal.
Was that not the greatest? I remember. Was it the Time Life commercials where they did the whole set on the paranormal that you could order?
Yes, I think that might have been. We had a big set. It was 24. I think it was 24 volumes. When those things would come, starting 5 years old, I am reading about, past life regression, hypnotherapy, tarot cards, interpreting dreams, palmistry, clairvoyance, psychometry, retro recognition. I mean, I was like Fox Mulder by the time I was 10. I could just, walk into an unusual situation and give you 5 possibilities of what something could possibly be of a paranormal nature. So that was kind of just who I came to be. And it kind of grew. But I wasn't the only one in my family. My sister kind of fed into this as well because she was sort of into ghosts and anything unusual and stuff. And aside from terrifying me half the time, sometimes she would come in like older sisters can do and talk about how all the teddy bears came to life and snuck into the tool shed and grabbed all the tools and sawed the little kids in half, because they were beating the teddy bears up, and then good night, sweet dreams, and then leave, and I'd be terrified. So she would do those kind of insidious things from time to time, but she used to talk about how, when she died, she wanted to be a ghost, and talked about a haunted house down the street and all of this stuff about ghosts. And
let's stop right there because that's interesting. I've thought about that a lot, and I think that would suck.
It would.
A lot of times when I think about, man, when I die, God, how bad would it be suck to be stuck in a museum or a field or a house or gosh, that'd be horrible. I don't know, man. I hope when I die that I go to wherever the cool place is to be, and You know what I mean? Even if it is the cliche thing, I hope I get to hang out with the people that I miss and I love. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just hope that we can hope that's play out. Because I don't want to hang out my damn in this some crap town and having to deal with people and a bunch of annoying ghost hunters. That would suck.
Or have some restricted barrier, like you're grounded to this house. You
Oh,
can
have you
only
ever
perceive
seen?
reality in this house. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie Ghost? Not
Yeah.
not the Patrick Swayze. What is it? Is
Oh,
it Ghost Story? I think it's called
yes.
with Casey
That's about a
Affleck.
haunting, right?
Well, this is almost like a realistic point of view. If you die and you are a ghost and you're stuck and you have no concept of a time schedule, and basically you're just like a conscious entity existence. It's one of the most interesting, boring, depressing, and cool movies I've ever seen. I think it's called Ghost Story with Casey
Okay.
Affleck.
Yeah.
So
No, I can't say that I've seen
if
that.
you could probably catch it on Prime or if you just gave it a Google search, Ghost Story, Casey Affleck. It's an interesting story, man. It really is. Definitely check it out.
Making a note
Yes,
right
Live
here.
Light has got a. She gives the shout out. It's the Time Life Mysteries of the Unknown, 33 volume set, 1987 through 1991. Yes, Live Light is correct. Those things were awesome. I remember watching those as a kid and be like, gosh, I want that. I want those.
Yeah. Okay, so flash forward, 18 years old. I was 17. I signed up, joined the Army Infantry, and then immediately went off to the Army when I got out of high school. And I was an oddball in the Army. Army Infantry in particular. Infantry in particular, because they're the ground pounders, the Neanderthal caveman type, which was part of my personality. I mean, I lived part of my childhood in Arkansas, running around in the woods, and I was a free range kid, really kind of wild, and had more energy than I knew what to do with. So I thought, well, I'm up for some high octane stuff, leaping out of helicopters and running around shooting stuff, and that sounded like a recruiter made it sound like a glorified camping trip. It's not camping, but
oh yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I really set the tone for myself. I was set. Went to Fort Ord over here. This is back my unit, and I set the tone for the next 3 years. I really kicked myself in the foot because we had this land navigation exercise in like the first 2 weeks there at the base. And land navigation is where, you get a compass, you learn how far you walk with, they call it your pace count, how many steps it takes to do, 100 meters or whatever it is. So you learn how to read topologies on maps and then find your way around in the middle of nowhere using a map and a compass, old school. And they had all these targets, like poles with a sign buried in some brush somewhere. And if you did everything right, you would find the GPS coordinates to these different targets that were all over the base. And Fort Ord is 20 square miles. So you could go 5 miles in any given direction and searching around for these different targets. And turned out my team leader knew all the targets. He had them memorized. He'd done land navigation on the base so many times, he didn't feel like doing it. And I was teamed up with my team leader. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, let's break away from everybody and kind of go over here and hide out under these trees for about 2 hours, and then we'll go turn in our sheet. I'm not going to argue with him. I'm like, well, personally, I would rather wander around and find the targets and, get some experience land navigating, but he didn't feel like doing it, and I'm not going to buck the system. I'm certainly not going to narc him off. So we all went and chilled out under a tree, and we're just sort of sitting around, and I'm thinking, okay, you got birds chirping and all this nature going on, and it's kind of like a camping trip. What do you do when you're on a camping trip? You tell ghost stories. And just didn't have a campfire, but we're in the nature. And I thought, well, this is kind of one of my favorite questions that I used to ask people anyway. I would always have this question and I like to open up. And being young, I wasn't very savvy at figuring out how to orchestrate a conversation to squeeze something in. Like, what's the most unusual thing you've ever seen or had happen to you?
Yeah.
It takes some social savvy to actually whip out a question like that without somebody getting weird on you. So I just popped it out of the blue, said, Corporal, have you ever seen a ghost? And he about jumped out of his skin, just me asking the question. And I'm thinking he probably thought that there was something like this right behind him, it was ridiculous. The way he acted, he literally jumped, and then everybody laughed, and then he made me do some elevated push-ups and started yelling at me, and then everybody's just really got a kick out of that question, and that was like fuel for the next half hour of total roast. They were ripping out one thing after another. People I didn't even know were making fun of me for like the next half hour. And I'm like scratching my head, like, I didn't intend it to be a funny question. It's just a question. And as much as I defended myself every time I opened my mouth, well, then, the Army is one of these, you could probably call it a boot camp for comedy, because people learned expertise on roasting, especially drill sergeants. They're really good at just tearing people up. But yeah, that was the next 3 years. I got a couple of nicknames that I never got out of. So I pretty much owned it. I got to where I didn't care. And I found a very small group of people, like 3 or 4 guys that played Dungeons and Dragons. And so I sort of fell into Dungeons and Dragons as my escape. More paranormal type stuff there. So I memorized all the, monster manuals, deities and demigods. They had the Dungeon Master then. He was had a game that was a 3rd generation game, 30 years old.
And let me ask you, John, what year time range was this?
So I joined the Army in 1988.
Okay, so this was late 80s, early 90s, and if people don't remember, because I sure as hell do, Dungeons and Dragons wasn't nowhere near as accepted back then as it is now. Now it's a very popular game. It's considered to be one of the pioneers of a lot of these role-playing style games. But back then, Dungeons and Dragons was satanic, and people, it would make
even though I didn't think so.
You would commit suicide. Don't play Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, they had this movie called.
They
Monsters
had that
and
movie,
Mazes.
that after-school special thing.
Yeah, Monsters and Mazes. One of the characters loses his mind, and
yeah. So I mean, that was like, so man, you were. So we got to say this right off the bat, dude. For you to be around in an environment like the Army, and being brave enough to get your D&D-ing, I mean,
I even posted this on my door. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to freaking own it. These people are going to tear me apart all the time anyway. I'm going to be who I'm going to be, and I don't give a flying rip.
Yeah.
It earned me a lot of heartache. If I could do it again, I probably wouldn't be so brazen in everybody's face about it, even posting this goofy thing on the door. But I did. I had my section of the room. There was a shelf, and I had all my paranormal books there, crystal ball.
Well, I think that's also a little badass of you, man, because some people do the complete opposite. Some people fold, but you were like, screw this, I'm the minority here in this group, but I'm going to be loud and proud, of my geekism. Let me say this real quick. Live Light did post source of that movie, A Ghost Story, 2017 with Casey Affleck and Rooney Mars. Guys, afterwards, maybe sometime this weekend, if you get a chance, watch it. It's a great movie. John, you watch it. And then Don Marie Peterson says, D&D forever.
I was a dungeon master after I got out of the Army for a while. a little while.
And Monsters and Mazes, 1982 with Tom Hanks. Live Light says, there we go.
Yep. And then I think when Lord of the Rings movies came out, and then it became more widely known, the fact that what's his name, J.R.R. Tolkien himself was a theologian. I mean,
yeah,
and a lot. There's just so much symbolism. Every other character is a messianic character. I mean, Return of the King. How on the nose do you get with that? So when you actually look at the story, remove the wizard, all wizard evil, surface level analysis of it, and look at it for what it really represents. It's basically another version of the Bible. It's so he kind of like brought Dungeons and Dragons back, a revitalization of J.R.R. Tolkien kind of brought Dungeons and Dragons, gave it a facelift, and so to speak. So people weren't so totally,
well, most people tend, they freak out and they misdiagnose what they don't understand.
Yeah.
So, I think that's kind of something that happened with Dungeons and Dragons. And even, if people didn't know better about Lord of the Rings, they would do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So my second year in the Army, the Panamanian conflict broke out, and we shipped off to Fort Sherman, which is right here. And they didn't have a fence around the back of the base, but it was jungle. They literally had their own zoo at this base. And they had these spiders that were like bigger than my hand, and they weren't
holy
tarantulas.
caca.
Bugs. Oh my goodness. The bugs alone would eat you alive. They had sections of the jungle there that you would see several hundred square feet blanketed in 2 to 3 inches thick carpet of ants that was just the ground would move.
That's disturbing and scares the hell out of me. But is that a little girl eating a tarantula? Is that?
Yeah, I just threw that in there.
I'm gonna have nightmares. That's what scares me right there. Okay. So.
They had quadrumundi in there. They had panthers in the jungle, and they had all of these things that were deadly enough as it is. The plants attack you, the bugs attack you, and other things. But we were having to go out there and do perimeter guard watch and stay out there in the middle of the night in the jungle for a while. And it was there that I encountered the greatest, most magnificent paranormal experience that I had up until this point. And that's saying a lot.
Here's the good stuff, folks.
So we had what you call sheet lightning going on in the sky, and it looks kind of like this haziness in the sky, this sort of kind of fog blended into cloud, overcast, but it's not really defined clouds. There's so much humidity in the atmosphere there. And there would be these like fluttering, flickers and fluttering of light in this haziness. So we saw that all the time, and it's easy to just dismiss because it doesn't look like regular lightning, but that's what it is up behind the clouds. But it was near the end of my watch around midnight that I noticed something that looked kind of like this picture here, that there was some of this fluttering, flickering light down in the jungle under the trees, under the canopy. And it was a really thick canopy of jungle there. And so I'm like, what is that? Finally it got my attention. I had like the 1,000-yard stare, not getting any sleep. But then I saw this, and eventually it came visible that it was this ball of light about the size of a soccer ball, and it would flash on like an instant, like somebody's walking through the jungle with a camera, a giant flash bulb attached to a camera and taking pictures or something. Because the ball was about the size of a soccer ball, and it looked like it was pure electricity, and it would illuminate the whole jungle when it flashed on. But it was just an instant, just flash. And when it wasn't flashing, you couldn't see anything, you couldn't hear anything. It's like it wasn't there. And I first spotted it maybe 900 yards out or so, and every time it flashed on, it would be a little closer, and every 30 seconds or so, it would flash. And it was making a beeline for our position. I picked up these night vision goggles I had, AMPVS 7, and I'm looking through these. I'm not seeing anything when it's not flashing. So it's literally not there. And I'm scratching my head going through my Rolodex, in my head, like, okay, ball lightning, swamp gas. It's not either of those. It's not acting like them. Ball lightning tends to be perpetually on until it hits something and diffuses.
Yes.
Swamp gas tends to have a greenish, misty color to it, and it's more like a mist. It doesn't have a very well-defined shape most of the time. It doesn't flash on and off like a light. So this was really unusual that was coming my way. And so it was near the end of my shift, and the guy that happened to be with me was my team leader, and he was the leader of the pack of mockery. He was the one who was the grand poobah, making fun of me more than anybody else put together. And I'm sort of just sitting there staring at this thing, and I'm wondering, this is an opportunity. If this is what I think it is, it may be a different kind of life form than we formally know to exist.
Now, was this it? Okay, because you said it wasn't swamp gas, it wasn't ball lightning. Did it kind of move almost like an intelligent, like it knew you guys were there? Do you feel like
it was making a beeline for our position?
Okay,
it was coming straight toward us. So as I'm thinking about this thing, I'm wondering, why is it coming straight here unless it's coming to investigate? And I thought, well, this thing looks like it's electricity. If it is some kind of new kind of ball lightning I haven't heard of or whatever, I better not wear this M60. So I took my M60 off because it's metal, and I thought this thing should be attracted to it. We also had a backpack with a bunch of lithium batteries, large lithium batteries to power the radios that we had, the field radio, and a 6-foot whip antenna coming out of it. I'm like, this thing's a lightning rod. With this huge antenna going down to this radio with all these lithium batteries, I would think a lightning would be attracted to that as well. So I put the gun, the rifle with the backpack, kind of distanced myself from them a little bit. And then I woke up my team leader, and I'd already thought in my head, you know what? I'm not going to pass up this opportunity. I'm going to have to try to talk to this thing because it's acting intelligent.
Okay.
I can't pass this up.
So where we're at right now at the moment, you're not the only one seeing this. The team leader has seen this too, correct? Or
not yet. He's asleep. I'm waking him up.
Okay. You're waking him up. But he is the guy who likes to roast you. He is the biggest skeptic of the whole group, correct?
He is.
Okay. But right now, you are the first one to see this, and you are the only one seeing this at the moment, correct?
This is correct.
Okay. This is what we're going to do, John. I love this story. Super interesting. I am hooked. We're going to cut to some messages, give a quick shout out to our sponsors. We'll be right back, folks, with the rest of this story. This is where it's getting really good. We'll see you guys right back here in a few.
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today.
Business. It's your property. Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services. Go to blacklightiss.com.
All right, guys, welcome back. If you're just now tuning in, we are here with John Milor, and you are in the middle of telling us this very interesting story. Actually, I think it's your first encounter with a UFO. John, go ahead and proceed with the good stuff.
Okay. All right. UFO or an entity anyway.
Yes.
Whether it was an alien or not, I still don't know. But so I'm sitting here and I'm contemplating this, and it occurred to me that I was in a very unique position for vindication, because I was about to introduce the biggest skeptic of anything slightly out of normal, unusual, whatever, to something that it was in his face that he couldn't deny. And I thought, this is going to be good, because, now he's on my turf. And I'm going to put on my Captain James T. Kirk hat, and I'm going to announce myself as, coming in peace. And this is going to be first contact. And he's going to witness me having first contact, trying to communicate with an alien life form.
So let me ask you this, because this is interesting on what you were actually feeling. Okay, now, you were a fan of the paranormal, before this, and a believer, you heard stories growing up, but dude, you're in the jungle, bro. You're out here, you're away from home. You're basically, you don't really have any real friends. And here you are with the biggest a-hole that you've ever known. and you're experiencing this glowing thing coming towards you, making a beeline straight towards you. And instead of fear going through your head, you're thinking, oh, you're going to believe me now, I'm going to get you now,
Yes,
So
exactly. Exactly.
That's
I
interesting.
had absolutely no fear in my mind whatsoever. He
No
was telling
fear-
me not to
fear at
put
all.
down my weapon. So I woke him up and I told him, it's time for your shift. And by the way, there's this glowing ball of light there in the jungle. It's coming right over here. And good night. I had no intention of going to sleep. I just laid it out like that. And I went to go over and acted like I was going to go to sleep. And he started cussing me out, saying, what the hell are you talking about? And he's all looking around. And then he realized, he thought, oh, he's screwing with me, And then he really got pissed because he thought, because it was creepy out. You're in the jungle, right? It could be anything out there. But he's, in the middle of cussing me out, it flashed. And this time it's really pretty darn close. It's only like maybe 100 yards away at least, but not that far. And he caught it out of the corner of his eye and he looked and I said, see, that was it. I told you, I'm not screwing around with you. You're the one that likes to joke around. I'm telling you, there really is something out there. And it's coming right over here. I've been watching it for the last 5 minutes or so. And so he kind of got perked up and he's watching it. And then it got closer and this thing kept flashing and it got all the way up to about maybe 30 feet away. And it was 30 feet up in the trees. And when it got to that point, it stopped and it kept flashing in the same spot. And now I'm just like really intrigued. If my idea of first contact was just a vague idea, now it was really formulating in my mind because this thing is exhibiting true intelligence. It came to our position and then it stopped and it's checking us out. It's pretty obvious. And so I tell the corporal, I'm going to communicate with it. And he's telling me, no, absolutely not. And I already had my weapon off and he got mad at that. And I'm like, what, you expect me to shoot a ball of light? Like that's going to do anything? This thing is pure electricity. If it wanted to kill me, I'd be dead already. He's really upset. And then he starts contemplating, he goes into the denial phase, oh, maybe it's a laser. They're shooting some laser from the Gulf, the carrier out in the Gulf. And I said, laser requires a straight line of sight. You see all these trees. This thing's down under the trees in the jungle. This is not a laser. So at this point, he goes catatonic and he's not talking anymore. He just basically shut up and his eyes were all saucered out and he was just not processing anymore. So I walked over into the slight little bit of clearing that was there near our position. And I stood there and I faced it and I introduced myself. I said, look, I'm just a human being out here in the jungle. I know that it may seem that, we're here invading your space, but, we mean you no harm. We come in peace. I have nothing against you. I'm just curious about what you are. And I just wanted to introduce myself to you. And if you would be willing, to, reveal yourself to me or try to communicate to me. Then the 30 seconds kind of came and went and it's not flashing anymore. So I'm like thinking, okay, what's going on? It's like thinking about a response or what? And suddenly I had this feeling come over me. So, the feeling that you get when you know that you're being watched?
Oh, yeah.
Amplify that by about 1,000. This feeling was so intense that I literally felt exactly where the presence of this thing was at. I could feel its presence, like GPS. It was letting me know I am over here. And then I felt it moving toward me. And so I'm narrating, I'm talking to the corporal, and I said, dude, I feel it moving. I feel it moving. I don't know how I feel it moving, but it's moving toward me. And I take a couple of steps back because this is just really intimidating. This thing emanated a presence that it was powerful. Whatever this thing was, it was really powerful because I felt it moving toward me.
Now, what is the corporal doing at this moment? I mean, is he still kind of just...
He shut down. He's just staring.
So he's seeing this, but he's not really knowing how to process. He's such a skeptic.
Yeah, he's shut down. I took a couple steps backward because I was kind of like this thing is getting really up front and personal with me. I felt it moving, but I tried to suppress that the best I could, and I lifted up my night vision goggles, and I'm like, I still don't see it, but I feel it. And I said, oh, it's going right over my head, and I'm following it with the goggles, even though I don't see it. And I do a complete 180. This thing kind of lowered a little bit, and it flew right over the top of my head, and I felt it as it passed over me. And then it went behind me about maybe 30 feet, and then it kind of parked itself up in these trees. And I spun all the way around, was facing the opposite direction, and I had my goggles up, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I point up in the trees, and I say, the next time it's going to flash right there. And when I pointed and said the word there, it flashed exactly where I pointed on cue when I said the word there. And wow. I was amazed. I was like, okay, you saw it. You saw it. This thing communicated to me. It wasn't a language, but it let me know that it was alive and that it was telling me, like, somehow transmitting its location to me.
Now, feet-wise, how far was that when it did that flash from where you guys were at?
About 30 feet.
Okay.
So I was shocked. I'm like, that confirms it. This thing is intelligent. This isn't a probe. So part of my mind, I was thinking maybe this is an alien probe or something. But no, this thing was alive. I could feel its presence. And I'm just going on and on, a chatterbox about this thing, just so excited. It didn't do anything like so totally extraordinary, like suddenly assume a human shape and then have a conversation with me, or open a portal. No, nothing like that. It just let me know that it was there, it was alive. I'm convinced it could have killed me if it wanted to, but it didn't. It was curious. I kind of had this sense about it that it was just curious and wanted to know why we were out in this jungle, such a inhospitable place.
Well, do you
not
think
normal to get visitors out there?
You guys, okay, it was a conflict back then. Was this the thing that was going on in the Panama area?
Noriega, yeah.
The Noriega thing. And
yeah.
So there was a little conflict down there with the Noriega thing, and you guys, I think, were trying to, there to kind of push him out.
We were there leading up to the main conflict, and then the Rangers came in, took the airfield, and we came in and backfilled them, and then went into the Panama City after that. We did patrols all over the city and stuff.
You even blasted music.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. So then let's back up to that, because that's interesting, because there is a continuing thing and a lot of sightings around conflict areas, stuff like that, stuff that's going on. Mm-hmm. So do you think there was a possibility that this thing was there, to what's going on? What are you guys doing?
Very well could have been. Now, of course, it occurred to me later, as I was just kept thinking about it, that the description of a will-o'-the-wisp in the Dungeons and Dragons books, Gary Gygax wrote those books based on legends and stuff. So, all of the cryptids and stuff, a lot of them in there actually come from actual legends, from folklore and whatnot. The will-o'-the-wisp, which is actually featured in the cartoon, that actually had a very strong resemblance to this thing, because where it lived, plus will-o'-the-wisp are known to try to evoke people's curiosity and then get them to follow them, and then you end up falling into a snake pit or some quicksand or something bad usually happens to you. They're generally not good. I didn't really get an alignment from this, other than it kind of felt like some curious animal or a curious creature, but I honestly